This is Asian Insider, and I'm Nirmal Ghosh. Now, a significant transition is looming in Japan. Shinzo Abe is stepping down as Prime Minister, citing ill health.
病気と治療を
I needed to fight against the disease and be treated, and I was not really in a perfect state in terms of health, and still I had to make important political decisions.
So Shinzo Abe is the longest serving prime minister in Japanese history and a very consequential prime minister. On the domestic front, he pushed economic reform. Abenomics is a term familiar to all of us. He has a mixed record on that. Also very significant was his attempt to amend the Japanese constitution's famous Article 9, which basically renounces war. He failed in that. One reason he tried was nationalism, and another is the reality that Japan has two very powerful nuclear-armed neighbors, China and North Korea. On the foreign front, he forged a strategic relationship with India and with Australia. He has been a driver of the Quad, the informal security dialogue bringing together Japan, India, Australia, and the US, famously described as like-minded countries in the Asia-Pacific region. Now, here in the US, Prime Minister Abe was seen as carrying the flag of progressive Western values, democracy, free enterprise, transparency, and so forth. And he developed a very good relationship with the President of the United States, Donald Trump. He managed that relationship very well. Today, we don't look back so much as look forward as to whether his initiatives, his policy initiatives, the changes he has wrought will be carried forward. What parts of those will endure? To help us look ahead, we have Dr. Satoru Nagao, visiting fellow at the Hudson Institute here in DC. Dr. Nagao's area of expertise is security, alliances, and defense strategy in South and East Asia and the Pacific. And from our studio in Singapore, we have Straits Times associate editor Ravi Velloor, who has had more than 4 decades of journalism in Asia and is maybe the only one to have accurately predicted that Shinzo Abe was going to step down. Dr. Nagao, if I may start with you, with someone other than Shinzo Abe at the wheel in Japan, what is the future of the Quad?
The Quad in the Indo-Pacific, he was a pioneer. So before he started to say the Quad and Indo-Pacific, the people believe the Pacific and the Indian Ocean completely different. So, but he combined two as a one concept. Indeed, this is very important, the counter-China strategy. This is one of the good methods to maintain military balance with China. And maintaining military balance with China is very important. That is the reason Prime Minister Abe identified this is an effective strategy. Because when we check the China's move in the South China Sea, when France withdrew from South China Sea in 1950s, when the United States withdrew from Southern Vietnam in South Vietnam in 1970s, or when the Soviet Union withdrew from the Vietnam in 1980s, and when US withdrew from Philippines in 1990s, that timing, China expands their territory by occupying the reefs and islands in South China Sea. This means that when China finds a power vacuum, they will move. If we maintain the military balance with China, there is no place, there is no power vacuum. China can exploit and expand. So I should reply about the future of the Quad. That it expects that China will not change so soon. So this means that condition is same, and so this means that counter-China strategy itself will not change.
Ravi, if I may come to you, out here we see mostly the relationship with Donald Trump. But Prime Minister Abe has a very good relationship with India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi. What will his absence mean from the wheel in Japan? What happens to the India-Japan relationship post-Shinzo Abe?
Well, you know, Nirmal, it's generally said in international relations that, you know, personal relationships are not that important and that national interests always predominate. But this is a rare relationship in which the personal was just as key to the relationship as the national interests. And the relationship that Shinzo Abe worked with India did not start with him. It started with his grandfather, PM Kishi. Kishi and Nehru were good friends, and I think Kishi's term was between 57 and 60. They were good friends, and they set the relationship on a certain track. And his granduncle, Sato-san, also contributed to the relationship. The Indians were wise enough to cultivate Abe right from the time he was a backbencher in the Diet. I think that a relationship with the Indian embassy and Abe started in 1996. And when Abe-san came to New Delhi as Chief Cabinet Secretary, the Prime Minister of the time was Dr. Manmohan Singh, and ignoring protocol, ignoring the wishes of the Ministry of External Affairs, saying that this is way beyond protocol for a Prime Minister to see a Chief Cabinet Secretary, Dr. Manmohan Singh invited Abe-san to tea, and that set a relationship which was furthered by Mr. Modi. So inevitably, Abe-san's departure from power will have some impact on the relationship. I'm not saying it's going to be a lethal impact, because national interests are always there. You are faced with a rather aggressive China, or maybe not aggressive, but certainly an assertive China. Those relationships cannot, those situations cannot be ignored. It's also important, I think, to realize that the relationship that Abe-san built with Donald Trump also impacted the India relationship, because it fed into Trump's own comfort with Modi to find his best friend in Asia also talking pretty much the same language. So I'd say that there would be a little impact, but the substantial relationship has to move forward.
Dr. Nagao, how do you see the US-Japan relationship going forward? And obviously, there's going to be potentially a new president in the US, but whoever is the new prime minister in Japan is going to have to deal with whoever comes to power in the US. And it's a critical alliance. How do you see the US-Japan relationship going forward?
Simply said, there is no problem between US and Japan. But at the same time, of course, personally, the Prime Minister Abe is a good friend of the President Trump. So it is easy to communicate, that's true. But at the same time, the foreign policy decided not only by the personal relation, but also the strategic situation or the more bureaucratic connection. So this means that there are no problem between US government and the Japanese government. So this means that very cordial relation will continue, I believe.
Right, Ravi. Japan has historically been and remains a very powerful influence in Southeast Asia. In many countries, it is competing head-to-head with China. In Myanmar, for instance. Now, under Shinzo Abe, Japan has been a very prominent regional player. What do you see going forward in terms of Japan's regional role?
Well, I think, Nirmal, that, you must remember that Prime Minister Abe was, although he's stepping down a year early, is a bit of a sad thing for the region. The fact is that he had to go a year from now. The next September, he was scheduled to leave office anyway. So right. Southeast Asia was always prepared for that transition. It's just that it came a little earlier than it was prepared for. I would say that the Prime Minister has set a very good stage for his successor. He's handing over a wonderful relationship to the next in line, whoever that is, and it looks like it might be Mr. Suga, who's very much pretty much in his mold of thinking. He's leaving office at a time when Southeast Asia has pretty much forgotten the Japan of the 1940s when it suffered under the Japanese jackboots. And today, the perception of Japan in Southeast Asia is significantly positive. if there was a study by the Institute of Southeast Asian Studies in Singapore that showed that more than 60% of people in this region have a favorable view of Japan. And that's compared with just about less than 40% for the Americans and less than 20% for China. So it is a very good relationship. You know, last year the Japanese helicopter carrier, the JS Kaga, the Kaga sailed through Southeast Asia and went all the way up to Sri Lanka, Colombo. And nobody talked about, you know, Japanese militarism or anything like that. It was just accepted as a, you know, as a normal thing. I went on board. I spoke to the captain of the ship, the admiral of the fleet. You know, it was pretty much normal. Nobody raised any eyebrows in Southeast Asia about Japan being back in these waters. I think he's leaving Southeast Asia in a very good spot, or rather he's leaving Japan in a very good spot with Southeast Asia.
Yes, okay. So a significant degree of continuity and a very positive and benign image basically across the region.
I would think
Ravi
so.
Velloor, Satoru Nagao, thank you very much for being with us today. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Nirmal. It's been a pleasure being with you on the show.
So, a good degree of continuity expected from Shinzo Abe's successor. An early challenge, of course, will be to forge a working relationship with the occupant of the White House after the November election here in the United States. For Asian Insider, I'm Nirmal Ghosh.